Tonight on And Another Thing About Tartan, we are delighted to welcome Charles Maclean, founder and director of MacLean Bruce, one of Scotland's leading whisky-focused travel companies. After spending the last 40 years writing and teaching about whisky, we knew that Charles would have some fascinating stories to tell. Charles is considered a leading global whisky expert, a prolific author, and even an accidental film star. We can't wait to find out more about that.
So, Charles, you were born in Glasgow, I think I'm right in saying, but you were raised in Kildonan on the Isle of Arran. So, what was growing up there like for you? And
well,
when...
now that's not strictly true. I was born in Glasgow. My father was a surgeon. He was a Glaswegian. My grandfather was a radiologist in Glasgow and so on. He became a consultant in Carlisle, but we had long family connections with Kildonan on the south end of Arran. Going back to the 1920s, my grandfather used to go on holiday there and take a house, rent a house for the summer months. And so my dad, he was always had his holidays there. And when me and my brothers were kids, we always had our holidays in Arran. And then in about 1960, Dad bought a little cottage very close to the cottage that they used to rent. And so and which we still have. It's owned by my brother now. But so all our holidays were spent at Kildonan, except one Easter when it must have been about mid 1960s, and when all my wee friends were going off to exotic places like Benidorm and Ibiza and places, and we pestered our parents to say why can't we go to an interesting foreign place for our holidays. So we had a week or whatever it was in Ibiza, and that was great. But in the kind of debriefing afterwards, my dad said, "And how do you like that?" And we said, "It was great." And we were water skiing and all sorts of stuff. We were quite weak. But when are we going back to Ireland? So that cured any desire for foreign travel. So and then at the university and so on, it became my base. So I lived there when I wasn't away at university, and so it's home really, better, more than Carlisle, So that's the connection, really.
Yeah, wow.
Very interesting.
And so your love for travel then, you obviously, Ibiza didn't float your boat, but where did that come from? How did that begin? And is Scotland always your favourite destination, or do you have other favourites?
I don't like travelling, to be honest. Before the coronavirus, in 1919, I was 23 times abroad to 17 countries. So for my job, for the whiskey-related work, I travel a great deal and have done for 15 years, I should think. Although 2019 was a particularly busy one in terms of foreign travel. I mean, I'm very well looked after when I'm at my destination, but they look after me. I fly business class, etc., etc. But I loathe airports, and I don't sleep well the night before in case I've missed the flight and so on. So I'm not a good traveller. So actually, it's been quite a release or a relief, should I say. This lockdown period has. I've had no travel except very beginning of last year when I was in New Zealand, and it'll pick up again. I do an awful lot of work in China, and that'll pick up again, I'm sure. But I'm quite happy to have a break from travel. But I mean, my wife and I, we followed the same pattern as my parents, and indeed her parents, because they've got a wee croft house up in Assynt at a place near Drumbeg called Ned, and so we always, with my three boys and I, when they were very small, we always had our holidays up in Sutherland, and which has been absolutely great. And they have no regrets of not going. We've got boats, we've got lobster pots, we've got fishing rods, we've got wild country, and And what more do you want? You know, so yeah, Scotland's my holiday destination. Certainly.
Your favourite destination?
Oh yeah, I wouldn't go anywhere else.
We don't blame you.
The what? Sorry.
So I said I don't blame you for loving Scotland. So Charles, I just wanted to ask you about your company. MacLean and Bruce were founded back in 2013 by yourself and Vicky. Could you tell us a bit more about that and how the company was formed and what your inspiration was and what sort of the journey's been like over the past 8 years?
Well, I have a great friend who is a professor in Canada, and so we're talking about 2012, 2011 maybe, and he had a number of people, friends of his, I think they were from a golf club or something like that, and they were very keen to do an upmarket tour in Scotland. So he phoned me to say, how can we get this organized? And I had long been doing work with Alex Bruce, that's to say Vicky's husband, who is the managing director of an independent bottler called Adelphi, and is now the managing director of the Ardent American Distillery, which opened a couple of years ago. And Vicky was at a bit of a loose end and was very keen to get involved in the travel business. And it's not as easy as you'd think, because the insurances and licenses and stuff that you have to get are immense. But anyway, this has started her off. And in fact, the proposed golfing trip came to nothing. But by that time, she'd done a lot of research and worked out how to go about it. Now, Alex, her husband, is the son of, he's actually the Honourable Alex Bruce, and he's the son of the Earl of Elgin, the chief of the Bruce. And so she's got very, very good connections. And so the idea, the proposition of MacLean, we then struck this company, MacLean and Bruce, which she runs the show, and I'm just a name. But to really for specialist travellers, very small groups, who want to go even beyond the top hotels, who want to go and stay in private houses, go and have dinner with the Duke of such and such or the Earl of such and such, and have a bespoke tour about what they're interested in. And principally, it's now sort of developed so that it's now focused more on whiskey, which of course is my main expertise and interest. We can do golf tours, and we can do, we'd pull in experts on golf. We can do genealogical tours, experts on genealogy, that sort of thing. But it's all tailor-made according to what the client wants. And so it's evolved from that small beginning. Interesting enough, I was talking to Vicky this morning, and the obviously during the last year there's been no travel at all. But she has been phenomenally active. She was saying to me that she'd done 17 hours yesterday. And I said, what on earth were you doing? Oh, the inquiries, the negotiations, the people who are a lot of these small specialist travel companies have folded during the COVID period. And so other companies or corporations or whatever, the market has narrowed, and so she's had a number of inquiries from groups, organisations, individuals who are interested in travelling in Scotland, and so that's how it goes. And so it's looking. She hasn't got, so far as I'm aware, she hasn't got a huge number of bookings in the diary. But my goodness me, the potential is absolutely vast. I mean, so much so that I can probably give up my day job and do nothing but doing whiskey tastings, because I really come to bear when it's to do with whiskey, taking them to distilleries, doing specialist tastings, doing private tastings for them, and then of course accompanying them and talking about history and what have you when they're traveling around. So that's how it goes. So it's just a very small company, but we can draw upon enormous support from both the whiskey industry and from owners of houses, and also now she's got a huge network within, you know, luxury hotels in Scotland. So that's the basis of MacLean and Bruce. Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. And so you yourself, obviously enjoying your wee dram there. We're quite jealous, aren't we?
So they are.
We're well recognised for your whisky expertise and the author of 17 books. So tell us more about your books and what inspired you to write them. Maybe it was just the whisky.
Well, we need to go back a bit. I spent most of the 1970s doing various law degrees. We're doing degrees. My first degree was in art history. Second degree was in law. Apprenticeship in law, qualified as a solicitor in Edinburgh, and then realised that I didn't want to be a lawyer at all, to my father's dismay. And so I then set up my plate as a literary. I was always very interested in books, and so I set up my plate as a literary agent, and then promptly starved, and then started ghostwriting first of all. So publishers would phone me up and say, do you have any authors on your books who can help so and so to write a book about such and such? And and by that time I had a business partner, and we would say, yeah, we'll do it. And that soon, well, by about 1980, we had transformed ourselves into not only doing literary agency and if you like, ghostwriting books, but also commercial copywriting. And that's what saved the day, because so a lot of the work during the 80s was mainly for design agencies and sometimes for advertising agencies, and that brought home the bacon, as it were. And it was out of that. I mean, I'd long been interested in whiskey just as a consumer. But my first job for a whiskey company was Bell's, and that was in 1981. And thereafter, purely by chance, during the 80s, I did a lot of work, corporate brochures, you know, annual reports, this sort of thing, for various whiskey companies, a large number of whiskey companies. And so and I was writing books under my own name about Scotland, words for cash, you know, Scottish castles, Scottish tartans, Scottish toasts. The first book was 1985 that came out under my own name, was called The Fringe of Gold, which was about the fishing villages on the east coast of Scotland. And and come 1988, I didn't have a book on the back burner, which I always like to have a book on the back burner when the commercial work was slack. But I had not only, by this time, a considerable interest in Scotch whisky, but also a track record, enough to make a fist of a proposal to a publisher for a book about Scotch. So that was proposed in 88. It was signed up in 88, and it was published, I think, in 92. And that was the first of the books. And then after that, I got other commissions from publishers. Scotch whisky in those days was, in the 80s, it was in the doldrums, but it was beginning to take off by the late 1980s. I wasn't aware of this at the time, I have to say, but and by the 90s, there was a growing interest, particularly in malt whisky. And so further commissions followed. And then I became, you know, I was asked by various whiskey companies to do jobs for them. I did a formal training in what's politely called sensory evaluation, the nosing. You'll see this curious glass. This is a nosing glass, and so you smell before you taste. And I did a formal training with what is now the Scotch Whisky Research Institute in sensory evaluation, and that changed my life. It really did. So thereafter, I was being asked. I became the nose for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, chairing their nosing panel. I became the nose for a company called Adelphi. Well, the company Adelphi, which was founded in 92, which Alex Bruce is now the chairman of, and and so on. So through the 90s, the increasing, well, by that time, there was so much whiskey-related work that the commercial writing was sort of slackened, and as for writing books on other subjects than Scotch whisky, I could ignore them, and so that's how it all came about, and so now, I found myself in the extraordinary position of being like the grand old man of I'm used by pretty well all the companies to write tasting notes or to do tastings either at home or abroad, write stuff for them. I've written 5 books during the close down, this lockdown, and 2 of them were specifically for very, very rare limited bottlings of whiskey, which would go into the box with this eye-wateringly expensive malt, or indeed one was a Japanese whiskey, and so that's how it came about. But some of my friends who went into the law and who are now judges, or indeed even retired, or senior partners in law firms, and I don't envy them. I really don't. I mean, I think they rather envy me. My freedom. The whole life has been, I don't know where my next meal's coming from, quite frankly, but I've survived for this long period, and am now, well, described by the London Times as Scotland's leading whisky expert, which I deny, because I have many friends who know much more about it than I. But hey, if you read it in the papers, especially people like the Times, why not? So that's the background to the whiskey.
Great. No, it's very interesting. So I have to ask you, after all your years in the whiskey industry, do you have a particular favourite dram, or one that you like to share with us?
Oh, my dear fellow, it is impossible to say. I mean, I'm looking here at sample bottles galore, random selection. Abrora 1977, Abrora 1978. Can you see them? These are the sort of bottles that they send me, and I have to write tasting notes. These will be retailing at, I would say probably around 10 grand a bottle, And then the next 2 are both Port Ellens. These are probably even more valuable. Port Ellen, and this is a Port Ellen, a 79, and two Port Ellen 79. I'm privileged to be asked to consider and assess. I mean, the last time I did a count, it was about 1,000 samples a year. These are for detailed tasting notes, but I also judge competitions. And over the course of the last time I tried to count, I'd probably looked at 1,000 samples, and these are mainly malt whiskies, and I simply could not say I do not have a favourite among the malt whiskies, because as I say, I'm privileged to take. I mean, any distillery, well, not all actually, but assume that any distillery can produce a superlative malt, but the same distillery can produce a dog. It's a lot of it's to do with the cask and how long it's been left in the cask, and there's the internal chemistry of the wood, etc., which makes it so fascinating. But having said that, I am actually secretly a blended Scotch drinker. When I'm just now, I've got I won't even show it to you, but I've got a bottle of blended Scotch, which actually I was involved in putting together for Adelphi and many years ago, and so my go-to when I want a dram at 6 o'clock, usually it's a bit early now, is a blended Scotch whiskey. And among blended Scotches, and I'm not paid to say this, by the way, I wish I was, Johnny Walker Black Label is my favorite go-to. Not Blue Label, which is 5 times as expensive, not Red Label, which I think is rough as guts, but the Black Label that just it's a wonderfully consistent and old-fashioned. It's a splendid blended Scotch. Yeah. So there we go. But I cannot name a malt whiskey that
Too many good choices.
that I would be my desert island I would certainly take a blended Scotch, not a single malt.
Very good. And so you're very well dressed today, and every month we celebrate a clan, and this month it is Clan Maclean. So have you always celebrated your Clan Maclean roots, or have you got other lines in the family? What's your
Well, I was brought up with it. My great grandfather was the president of the Clan Maclean Association. And organised a very significant gathering at Duart Castle in 1911. My grandfather was secretary to the Clan Maclean Association for a time. My dad would have nothing to do with it. He said it had become a tea party. But then I was brought in. I came into the council in 1976. So have been much involved ever since, and I was editor of the magazine for a spell. So yeah, I've been involved with Clan Maclean for forever, and it's a great organisation. I mean, the whole idea of clans is wonderful. You know, in that, and not so much for you know, the membership of the Clan Maclean Association. There are many more overseas members in Canada, America, Australia, New Zealand, particularly France, big chapter in France, than are in Scotland. And one has a sort of I think a sort of duty to keep these institutions going. You know, it's a wonderful thing. Many would say it's completely irrelevant to know where you've come from, what your antecedents are, you know. But it's a great comfort, in a way, to know that, to know what your background is and where you've come from. And I think that some people feel somewhat adrift when they don't know, frankly, where they. Many people, of course, anybody can survive perfectly happily without knowing this. But it's a sort of a comfort, as I say, to know your background, to know where you come from, and I think that these clan organisations and the whole idea of clanship is very worthwhile on that ground. You know, I really do.
Yeah, I think we would absolutely share that, which is why we love doing all the clan work and looking at the history and sharing with people. And as you say,
yeah,
often most interested are the people overseas. And
yeah, absolutely.
Good. So you've just stated a couple of the countries, obviously worldwide, and Clan Maclean is celebrated all over the world. So, and there are a range of tartans. I just wanted to know if you have a favourite tartan. I can see that you're wearing yours today. Do you have a favourite one associated with the clan?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you will know very well, that there are two principal Maclean tartans. Well, Duart tartans. So there's the Clan Maclean is divided. The principal division is between the Maclean of Duart and Maclean of Lochbuie, and so the clan came from these two brothers in the 13th century, 13th or 14th century, but it's generally accepted that Duart is the principal. Our chief is Duart, and then under that is Lochbuie, Lochgareth, Ardgour, Coll, a number of septs, in other words, so Lochbuie has his own tartan. It's a very attractive tartan, actually, and Duart has a dress tartan and a hunting tartan. This is the hunting tartan, and then within that division there are, well, I know of at least three. There's the dress Maclean old colours, the dress Maclean modern colours, and the dress Maclean dancing kilt, which is sort of white, which is uncommon, but it's sort of white background. And the hunting Maclean, this one I'm wearing, has old colours and new colours, and then there's variations, because as you know, the set, the actual colour, for example, the new colours is a darker green, and the set, you can see the tram lines. I mean, this particular tartan is my own family tartan, which is the set, the squares are slightly broader, and the lines are very slightly broader, and the green is a sort of an olivey green rather than either vivid bright green or a much darker green, which the standard stuff which you probably have in the shop, they tend to be. So, and then there's muted colours. I've got a kilt which is a sort of brown colour, which is supposedly sort of muted. It's a transmutation of again, you'll be familiar with this, where the traditional dyes, they turn to a sort of decay down to a sort of it's a sort of a browny colour, and so there are numerous variations, but those are the two principal ones: the dress Maclean and hunting Maclean are the two principal ones. And interesting enough, and I don't know, Adam, if you the first written reference to well, they didn't call it tartan, they called it checkered cloth, and it was for paying rent, was from dirt, and it described it as being a green and black, but it describes a tartan. This is in the 16th century, and a tartan which is well, not dissimilar, if you like, to the current tartan. Although, again, as you know, the blessed Sir Walter Scott sort of revived the whole idea of tartans, and indeed of individual tartans for individual families, rather than just localized tartans. And I mean, the truth is, as you know, that if one clan was raiding another, one of the things they would steal, as well as the cows and so on, would be any cloth, because cloth was valuable, and it took a long time to make. And the other thing is, of course, that the identifier in battle or whatever was not the tartan, because it was the plant badge in the bonnet. The Maclean plant badge is crowberry. Now, how on earth you'd tell that from a distance before you cut the chap's head off? I don't know. And you see, anyway, living in the conditions that they did, right into the 18th century, would be, you're talking about very smoky black houses, and in truth, anything you were wearing, and including you and your face and everything, would be blackened. I mean, it would be tarred with the smoke from peat fires. And so the idea of tartan as a specific identifier, I mean, there are prints, there's a famous print of the Mackay regiment in the Low Countries in the I think that's late 17th century, and they're all obviously it's an engraving, but you can see that the pattern of their costume, their kilts, is all the same. And so but I think it was all down to the what dyes were available locally, and indeed local tradition. It was nothing to do with proudly wearing your family tartan. This came in much later with Walter Scott.
Yes.
But hey, you're the expert, man. You tell me.
I was really enjoying your very nice synopsis of the history of tartan. So, very good. I think we should extract this and that, just pop it on our homepage. That was good.
Feel free. I probably got it wrong, or it'll probably lead to.
I was agreeing with what you were saying. It's quite funny, because I was just writing about crowberries yesterday, because I have to admit.
Oh, there we are.
So then you're obviously founder of a very well-established travel company, but have you got favourite places in Scotland that you like to visit, or you like to show visitors that kind of you think that show off Scotland to its very best?
Again, that's rather like asking me about whiskey. I mean, I've been so privileged to I mean, whether on even as a copywriter, and I mean, for example, I did a lot of work for a lot of work years ago for I think called the Grampian Initiative, and the Aberdeenshire and so on was a completely closed book to me until then. But then I made many trips out there, and I know there are some gorgeous places up there. Up north, I wrote a little book for Pulteney for Wick. You know, but there again, you know, we've always been a great sailing family, and my dad had a yacht, and both me and I don't own a boat, but I have a very good friend who has a very nice boat on the west coast, and so we always take a week, or I charter him for a week or 10 days, and with my boys and their friends. So I mean, to be very broad about it, I mean, I adore the west coast of Scotland. I adore the Hebrides. I know the inner Hebrides better than the outer Hebrides. But there again, you see, in whiskey-related terms, Islay is a most wonderful island, and I know it's places that I know you feel more affectionate for places where you've had a good time. Do you know what I mean? And I've had many good times on Islay. Speyside, you see, I love Speyside. I think if I didn't live in Edinburgh, I would probably Speyside would be high on my list. I have many good friends in that part of Scotland, and and of course there's distilleries around every corner. So I mean, we're so blessed. It's such a breathtakingly beautiful country. And we're so blessed, and we don't take it for granted. We don't take it for granted. I mean, every day is a wow, really. Even here in central Edinburgh, when you look across the Forth and you see the light on Fife and so on, or you look the other way. If you're up on High Street and you look the other way and you see the light over the North Sea, you know, I mean, sort of heart-renderingly beautiful, and yeah, so I mean, I couldn't say. I mean, I would just say if I was taking, and I have done, taking people to places, and oh God, it brings a tear to my eye. But and just say, just look what you see. I remember once taking she was a black African girl, lawyer, very bright, and she'd never been out of she was from Botswana, and I was asked just to show her a bit of Edinburgh. She'd been at a conference here, and to show her a bit of Edinburgh before she went back to Africa. She had never been out of Africa before, and I took her up off the sea. We walked up off the seat, and this hill in the middle of Edinburgh, and just looked around, and and she was seeing this for the first time. You know, the innocent eye, you know, and she said, "I will never forget this in my life. It is, I mean, it's not so much beautiful, but it was just so unlike Africa, if you like. But it's a great privilege to have the opportunity to show people our lovely country. Really, it's got tears in my eyes. Pathetic.
Shows how much she cares.
Oh, we love our country, don't we? We really do. Yeah.
We do. I think that's it's not unusual, but I think it is. I do think that's why Scotland's really special. I think we do feel like that.
It's very special. And you know, the interesting thing is that there are many beautiful places in Germany, many beautiful places in France, many beautiful places all over the world. But the whiskey communities that I deal with at these events, and there are I mean, really a big event. You're talking about 2,000 or 3,000 people at these whiskey fairs, wherever it's Taipei or Beijing or numerous in Germany and the Netherlands, and particularly the Europeans. Well, the French call Scotland la Pays Sauvage, and it's the last wild place in Europe. You know, the Germans adore Scotland because of the because of all our classic things, the mountains and castles and Lakeland history and all this sort of stuff. You know, and we have these emblematic, well, heavens above, kilts, tartans, bagpipes, haggis, whiskey. Don't decry them. Don't decry. We're a tiny country, and any country would give its eye teeth to have these resounding emblems that identify the country, And I know that there's a lot of modernists would think that, oh, get rid of all this Victorian, schmaltzy tat. No. Hang on to it, develop it. By all means, get realistic about it. I'm not saying earlier on, Walter Scott, if you like, invented tartan in a sense, or promoted tartan. But that doesn't matter at all. Thank God we've got it, and anyway, it's all. I mean, Scotland's history it goes back so far, and documented long before most countries in Europe. And hang on to it. Sorry, I'm rambling now.
No, it's interesting. It's all interesting.
So you're also known, you've been a bit of an accidental film star. So you were in the film The Angels Share. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, accidental is the right word. I was phoned up. I get phoned up from time to time by film production companies who, and they say, "Oh, we're thinking of making a film about whiskey, and what do you think?" and blah blah. And I'm always polite, but they're never made because they assume that since the Scotch whisky industry is fairly well to do, they'll get sponsorship for promoting Scotch whisky. Nope, the industry doesn't work. The individual companies within the industry don't work together. So you can do. I was involved in a film recently. Specifically about Jim McEwen, who is from Bruichladdich distillery, or Bowmore than Bruichladdich. But so if you're focused on one distillery, then maybe you can get some support from the company. I don't think in this case they did, but anyway. So most of these projects fail. So I would guess it must have been about 2010, 2008, possibly. I got a call from a production company in London, same sort of thing. We're thinking of making a film which involves Scotch whisky. The scriptwriter will be in Scotland next week, and he would like to have a word with you, And I said, send him along, no problem at all, Tell him to come about 6 o'clock, then we can have a dram together, you see. So this fellow came along, Paul Lafferty was his name, and he was like me. He was trained as a lawyer. He was in Glasgow, and but then he had become a scriptwriter, and he was the most delightful guy, the most charming fellow, and we had a terrific conversation. And only about 20 minutes into the conversation did he reveal that actually the film was to be made by Ken Loach, who was a legendary grand old man of English filmmaking. And the films are always a film by Ken Loach, scripted by Paul Lafferty. So my goodness, I sat up straight, and because this was clearly going to happen, and it wasn't it was to be a feature film, not a documentary or anything like that. And they certainly weren't looking for money from the industry or anything like that. And so there we are. So I was recruited as a script advisor, and about a year later, I was in regular contact with the producer, Rebecca O'Brien, and but about locations and about props and about other things, and indeed some of the actors came to me for tasting, to how to assess all this business about assessing whiskey. They would come for a day's tutorial, and then about a year or so later, the draft script, the first draft script, was sent up to me. Now, the way that Ken Loach works is that nothing is tightly scripted. So the actors, they've got an idea of what's going to happen in each scene, but they're not expected to learn a script or get in part, as they say. They've got to play themselves effectively, or most of them have to play themselves. And also they have to interact with non-actors who have no training at all. And Ken's been right in many of his films, he's using people who've never acted before. And indeed, among the lead the 5 lead characters in The Angel's Share, 3 had never acted before, including the lead player who did a brilliant, Paul Brannigan, who did a fantastic job. You know? So so I was sworn to secrecy. I was absolutely bound not to say anything about this script to anybody, because when they're shooting, he shoots, again going back to his technique, he shoots sequentially. So he starts at the beginning and then he shoots through to the end. Now in this scene, in this film, it starts in Glasgow and it finishes in Glasgow. So it'd be much more sensible, economically sensible, to do all the Glasgow scenes when the whole crew is in Glasgow at the beginning and the end. But nope, he won't play that game. He starts, and so nobody knows, nobody apart from the director of photography, the scriptwriter, the director, and myself, knows where it's going. The actors have no idea how big that part is, you know, or what's going to happen to them, you know. Indeed, it's a pretty violent film in parts, and Paul at one stage, because the action, as I say, starts in Glasgow, goes up north, and then returns to Glasgow, and the beginning scenes are pretty violent, and the gang warfare and stuff. And Paul begged Ken Loach to tell him, or he says, "Come on, pal, tell me, am I going to get killed? Am I going to get hurt bad? You know, when we go back to Glasgow." You know? But he wouldn't tell him. He wouldn't tell him. And so nobody knows what's going to happen next. And indeed, they all get their script for that day, either at the morning, or if it's a complicated shoot, the following day, they'll get it the night before. And so they can familiarize themselves with sort of what's going to happen. Anyway, that's the background. So it happened that I had to speak. I'm a consultant to Bonhams, or was. I don't do very much of it now, but the Bonhams auctioneers, and there was a bottle of very rare. It was a I think it was a Glenlivet, a very rare and expensive bottle of Glenlivet that was to be auctioned for charity. The charity was for the victims of the tsunami in Japan, whenever that was, about 2010, I think. And the owners of the bottle, Gordon and MacPhail in Elgin, phoned me and said, you know, we want to make a contribution to the tsunami fund. What do you recommend? And I said, well, the obvious thing would be try and auction it. But a single lot auction is very uncommon. But I phoned my friends in Bonham, and they said, yep, we'll do it. If you speak to the bottle, it's an excuse for a party. It'll be bought by somebody, you know, on the line, on phones or whatever. But, you know, it won't be bought from in the house, as it were. But we're prepared to do that if you'll do a talk. And so I phoned Rebecca O'Brien, the producer, and I knew that they were shooting in Glasgow. And I said, I don't know if there's any interest to you, because I knew that there was a single lot auction, it was a cask in the film. And so if any interest to you, given that to get the atmosphere, the vibes of an auction where there's, you know, bids coming in from outside. She said, yeah, that's great. Well, we'll come through. And so they came through, and the auction went ahead. And the following day, she phoned me up, and she said, that was great. Thanks so much indeed. And Ken would like you to have the role of the whiskey expert in the film. And I said, I'm not a bloody actor. She said, precisely. You know, because we want non-actors as well as actors. So that's how I got the job. Simple as that. That's why it's accidental. And I almost disgraced myself because I was in Germany, as a matter of fact, when she phoned, and she said, "We've been selected for Cannes." And I said, "Oh, that's brilliant!" You know, it's absolutely. Ken Loach is a god in France, and oh, that's terrific. Well done. I'm so glad, and we'd like you to come. And I said, "Well, Rebecca, in truth, you know, I'm doing a training course for Diageo next week, and it was the following week, and I don't think I'm going to make it." She says, "You must be joking, you know. There are parties and there is Cannes, you know. Get somebody else to take over the training course that you're working on." So anyway, I was easily persuaded, and my wife and I went down and had a very interesting experience. And of course, the film won the jury prize at Cannes. And I'll tell you one final little story, because I'm going to have to leave in a minute. During the screenings, there's a thing called the Croisette, which is the kind of coastal road, and the organisers of the Cannes Film Festival, they set up these. They're all black Mercedes with tinted windows and outriders, police outriders, wearing white gauntlets and, you know, and sort of these thick strap things, in #1 uniform. And of course, all the people are peering in and trying to see which star is which and all that sort of stuff. And I happened to be with Paul Brannigan, and he said to me, "How are you feeling, man?" And I said, "Well, I must say I'm feeling somewhat apprehensive about this." He said, "Don't worry, I'm old enough to be his grandfather, you know." "Oh, don't worry, man. Don't worry. You know, just be yourself. Just be yourself." What a star! What a star! Anyway, and then we went in with a red carpet and the whole works, and we watched the film. Mercifully, I hadn't been told before we'd seen the film that the Cannes audience is very, very choosy and very rude, you know. And if they don't like a film, they'll leave or they'll boo. But we got a 20-minute standing ovation. It was unbelievable. It was absolutely terrific. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to have gone on so long. I hope you can find something amongst these ramblings that will entertain your viewers.
No, it's fabulous. And yeah, there's lots of great little clips in there we'll pull out as well.
Definitely.
Very good. Thank you very much for joining us.
Not at all. My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay. God bless
Thank
you.
you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we'd like to say thanks to Charles for joining us today. We loved hearing his stories about Scotland and in particular whiskey. There were some fascinating stories in there, and I'm sure you'd agree. I hope that people from all over the world will be taking tours with MacLean and Bruce soon with their favourite dram of their whiskey.